This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mary Stoker-Smith here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. Well, the wind got the best of my hair today. Can you tell that? It's a windy one out there. We're going to take a peek at the weather a little bit later. It's been beautiful here in southeastern Wisconsin, especially for late August. But now Mother Nature decided to turn on the pumpkin spice, and it is windy. It is getting a little bit chillier. Tom told us right after noon that we're going to feel a little bit of a cold front. How low will we go? You fall lovers are rejoicing. I bet you had your cup of pumpkin something today, but it looks like things are going to take a turn. The question is, will the weather hold for this all-important holiday weekend? The Labor Day forecast, we'll have a little bit more on that coming up. For right now, we're going to take you out to Washington. We have a lot of news to get to today. We're going to give you an update on the tragedy in Minneapolis with the shooting there. We have some new developments coming in, and we certainly have some new information to pass along, but clearly that community still grappling, still mourning with the shooting that happened yesterday at a church there. And it's just, it's heartbreaking when we start learning about the details, the victims, and the shooter there, when we're hearing about some of the new details in the manifesto that may shed some light on a motive in this situation. We also have a lot to get to locally, but we're going to take you out to Washington, D.C. right now while we get some more information on Minneapolis, and we will definitely brief you just as soon as we get some more. Just a couple of minutes, we have some new information coming in. We're going to put that together, and we'll join you right back here in southeastern Wisconsin. But for now, we'll take you out to Washington, D.C. to the press briefing.
So this was a juvenile who was a risk to not just himself, but the community here in Washington, and he was removed from the community last night because of the law enforcement efforts of this administration. And I would also point to the statement of our wonderful First Lady that she released yesterday. She wrote, "The tragic mass killing in Minnesota illuminates the need for preemptive intervention in identifying school shooters. Early warning signs are often evident, with many individuals exhibiting concerning behaviors and making violent threats online prior to their actions. We encourage all Americans, as the old saying goes, if you see something, say something. If you see warning signs or threats, report it to law enforcement. This administration, federal law enforcement, will take those reports and those threats seriously. They will be treated as a law enforcement emergency, and we will act accordingly."
And on the First Lady's statement, would the administration consider ramping up resources on these fronts to parents and schools across the country to help them look into these signs and prevent more tragedies?
It's a very fair question, Iris. As for any potential future policy decisions or funding questions, it's just been over 24 hours since this tragedy occurred. Right now we're focused on the FBI and their investigation and uncovering all the facts, and we'll leave those very important policy discussions to another day.
Thank you, Caroline.
Go ahead. Megan.
I had a question about the Lisa Cook lawsuit that you mentioned. Does the president plan to wait until that lawsuit is resolved to appoint her replacement?
I will leave that to the president to make that decision in that announcement himself. Brian.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions. Bouncing off the CDC, situation with CDC, I'm curious if administration officials are pushing back on the president's agenda, privately, publicly, however, should they fear to lose their jobs going forward?
Look, I think if you're doing your job well, and if you are executing on the vision and the promises that the president made to the public who elected him back to this office, then you should have no fear about your job. Just do your job. That's what this president wants to see. He wants to see people solving problems. He wants to see the people who have the privilege of serving the American taxpayer and the federal government abiding by the wishes of the American taxpayers who overwhelmingly reelected him in this cabinet to make America great again, or in this case, make America healthy again.
On the Intel deal, where the U.S. got a stake in that company, there's two things I want to ask about that. The first is, what did the U.S. get back in return for that deal? And the second thing is, what are the future plans for giving any form of money to another company? It could be through the CHIPS Act, like this deal, or some other form of funds. What are the plans there by this YS administration?
Well, look, as you know, Brian, very well, because you cover it often, the Intel deal is still being ironed out by the Department of Commerce. The T's are still being crossed, the I's are still being dotted. These it's very much still under discussion. But the president's thinking, I can share with you, is certainly to ensure that the United States government is making our country wealthy again and is benefiting from some of these deals. And it's a creative solution. I know it's outside the box thinking, which is uncommon in this city, but it's something that he proposed and something that the Secretary of Commerce is working on putting into action. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. I have a couple questions on the shooting yesterday. The first one, this is the second shooting involving a trans-identifying shooter who specifically targeted Christians and Catholic kids. What kind of consequences do the gender-affirming therapists, doctors, or even the parents of these shooters face after these types of shootings?
Well, as for the parents and potential therapists in this case, again, all of that is still currently being investigated by the FBI. I know the Secretary of Health and Human Services this morning said that HHS is investigating perhaps links between some of these drugs and these prescription drugs that some of these minors may be taking and an increase in violence. And obviously we have mental health problems in this country that this administration and Secretary Kennedy will continue to speak out about and the work that we're doing to solve it.
Thank you. And just to follow up, I've seen a lot of calls for action, among these lawmakers saying that we shouldn't just be praying. One that I've seen on the right actually is calls for the FBI to institute a new class of domestic terrorism that involves trans ideology. Is that something that the administration would support?
I would have to check with the appropriate people on that.
Daniel. Thank you, Caroline. We saw some new revised economic data come out today showing the U.S. economy grew at a 3.3% clip, largely buoyed by a surge in capex. What's the White House reaction to this, and is this sort of the president's vision beginning to come to life after the Big Beautiful Bill was passed in July?
Yes, I mean, look, we did say that once the Big Beautiful Bill was signed into law, we're going to see the effects of this massive pro-growth piece of legislation. As I laid out for you as we head into the Labor Day weekend, there's many positive economic indicators that the American people can be hopeful about. But don't forget, we are reversing 4 years of reckless spending from the previous administration, of slamming regulations down the throats of American business owners and consumers across the country. But the administration is working very hard to unravel all of that and to ensure that small business owners and workers are thriving and that they have more money in their own pockets to spend. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Caroline. Back on the CDC, there was reporting that some of the initial problems between RFK and the CDC director stemmed from miscommunications or differences on vaccine policy. So I wonder if you could just say whether or not the president believes that the COVID vaccine should be available to and covered by insurance for all Americans regardless of age and pre-existing conditions.
What I will tell you is that the FDA recently revoked the emergency use authorizations for 3 COVID vaccinations while simultaneously greenlighting 4 new COVID-19 vaccines with 2025 and 2026 formulas. The reason for the revocation of that emergency use authorization is because obviously the COVID pandemic and the public health emergency is over. But just to correct the record, because there's been a lot of misinformation on this, the FDA's decision does not affect the availability of COVID vaccines for Americans who want them. We believe in individual choice. That's a promise both the president and the secretary have made, and it's a promise they have now delivered on.
Question if I could, Caroline. Second question if I could, sorry. I wonder if you could answer why the president hasn't acknowledged the shooting at CDC headquarters that took place earlier in August, where a police officer was killed, and it was reported that the motivation for the shooting was somebody who was really unhappy with the effects of the COVID vaccine.
We absolutely were very much aware of that shooting. The Secretary of Health and Human Services put out a statement immediately. He was in touch with the CDC, and he actually traveled to Georgia to assess the situation and to mourn with the people who work in that building there. So, go ahead.
With respect to Labor Day, one of the most underrepresented groups right now are police officers. 30,000 police officers short in America right now. To Brandon's question, 1,300 short in Chicago, 3,000.
And we are going to dip out of that press conference. We are going to have much, much more, of course, on the shooting in Minneapolis there. We were hearing Caroline Levitt there giving that White House press briefing. So many questions, so many rumors at this point about the shooter, the motivation, the fact that there are rumors saying, that he had a manifesto, and that manifesto undoubtedly will contain a lot of information onto the suspected shooter's mindset, on what may have been the catalyst for this heinous act. And of course, you know, at this point, we're hearing from law enforcement that he acted alone, but we also know that of course, there's always some type of an outreach. Were other people involved? Did anybody have any clue? You know, we just don't know. But the very disturbing details, of course, are continuing to come out. We're going to monitor that, bring you an update, of course, on the Minneapolis situation. But we also want to take you to, at this point, back here in southeastern Wisconsin, to La Crosse. And we are waiting right now to hear from Vice President J.D. Vance. He is in La Crosse right now, and he's going to address this large crowd that has gathered at Mid-City Steel over in our western city right there, my hometown, by the way. And it's always an interesting sight to see the big turnout there, and the fact that we haven't seen the vice president or the president in Wisconsin for a long time. So a lot of eager people there to hear what he will be talking about. Again, touting the big, beautiful bill there. We are expected to hear about manufacturing jobs, about some of those jobs for the trades coming to light. And Vance's return to La Crosse here, it really holding particular significance, of course, because this was a place that they really penetrated to try to get the votes there in what is typically a blue city. And so now he's coming back, and perhaps we will echo or hear some of the echoes of some of the things that they campaigned on, he and President Donald Trump. But at this point right now, we don't know a lot of details. All we know is that he is scheduled to speak right now. Supposed to be happening at 12:30, and so this is just a little bit behind, but we are going to take you to the press conference once he gets to the lectern there. Again, this is the first visit to the La Crosse area since the day before the election in 2024, so it's been a while since he's been there. This puts La Crosse really back in the political spotlight, as both parties there, of course, were looking for public opinion, and this area, of course, looking to infuse its area with some jobs, manufacturing jobs, and you go back to the history of La Crosse, and a lot of the jobs, manufacturing jobs that really kept families going there had left or dissipated, and so you wonder if this is going to be a bit of a resurgence there. We are hearing there from politicians that this is a talk, a gathering, and really a focus on bringing costs down for families, bringing jobs back to the area to continue, again, this push for manufacturing and made in America. So as we kind of await here, I think what we're going to do is take you back to Minneapolis. Again, he was scheduled to talk, Vice President J.D. Vance, at 12:30, 12:45 right now. It could be just a couple of minutes. If he does take the stage, we'll immediately come back to this area. But for right now, let's take you back to a prayer service in Minneapolis right now. I think that it looks almost like it's freeze frame. It isn't. There is a prayer service going on right now. And let's try to bring up some audio there. I think they're just doing a little bit of a pause. But before we get to that, we just want to talk about some of the services. So many communities there grieving, looking for some type of insight as to what happened and how we deal with this going forward, with kids going back to the classroom and this community shattered by this terrible, tragic shooting. They have gathered here for this service to try to bring some healing, perhaps try to bring some insight and some camaraderie and reflection in the community as they deal with the deaths here and the victims that are recovering. Looks like we're going to get a little bit of music right now. I'm just going to kind of let that breathe a minute and then kind of fill you in on, bring you in this beautiful service, very reverent, very poignant. As we listen in there, for those of you just joining us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, we are looking at a live picture right now in Minneapolis where people have come to pay their respects, to mourn, to gather, to share their grief during this very solemn time. Let's take you back a little bit. Right now, the tragedy happened during the first week of classes at a Catholic school in Minneapolis yesterday. A shooter opened fire during the morning mass at that Catholic school. 2 children were killed, 17 others injured, and the shooter took his own life. We heard an outpouring of support for the victims from elected officials and from community members. After this terrible tragedy, we also heard from a student, a very, very brave young man who talked about exactly what happened after that gunfire rang out. Flags at all public buildings, naval stations, and military posts, as well as the Navy vessels, are ordered to be flown at half-staff. Community members are gathering in places like this where there is a prayer service going on after the shooting victims, and of course those who are injured, as a way to just pay homage and talk about the need to heal after this tragedy. The 2 children that were killed were ages 8 and 10 years old. 14 of those 17 injured that I've mentioned, kids. And so many people said it was so scary. It was like shots rang out and everybody froze. The young man that we heard from yesterday said, quote, "It was like my friend got shot in the back." It's just been a terrible, terrible time. Extra security there, of course, is in place, and we continue to learn more about possibly a motive, possibly what could have caused this, and perhaps what could have stopped it. Schools, of course, doing extra security, and schools in our area even making sure that their security is in place and students know about what to do during an active shooter situation. And we talked to a security expert yesterday, Brian Doro, a friend of Fox 6. He's a security expert, former police officer, and he said the first thing we can never accept is complacency. Make sure that you know what to do in your community so that everything can be in place to respond to a mass shooting. It's just been a really tragic day to see so many of the things that were going on, play out over there in Minneapolis. We heard from our sister station there. We had a reporter online, or on air rather, and just talk about the community that is grieving and exactly what we can do to move forward, and that's exactly what they're trying to do right there. Looks as though we have lost that picture, at least for now, so as we continue to monitor that, let's see if we can get that back. I'm going to take you back to La Crosse in the meantime, because at some point we are waiting for J.D. Vance to come to the podium right there. We just lost our signal there in Minneapolis. We'll get that back, because we have a lot more to talk about with that situation. Let's just take a moment and pause, because we are again waiting to hear from the Vice President. He is going to be talking about manufacturing jobs in La Crosse and the area right there at Mid-City Steel. We don't know exactly what the agenda, what the timeline of the shooting will be, and exactly what the main punctuation will be, but no doubt it will be on bringing back jobs into the area, increasing productivity among workers there, and just, hopefully we've seen a surge, hopefully, in some of those manufacturing jobs. Right now, as we kind of wait for him to come to the stage, we're looking for more details. We're pretty tight-lipped on this. We do know that J.D. Vance touched down today in La Crosse, was expected to take the stage at 12:30. So as we do that and we monitor the situation out in Minneapolis, our picture is back, so I'm going to take you back to Minneapolis, because we don't know when the Vice President will actually take the stage. So let's go back to Minneapolis for right now and give you a look there at the memorial, the prayer service going on in our city, again, to the west of us. We've been getting some updates here, and I'm going to, as we take a look at that service there, that, our affiliate there and our camera there seems to be dipping in and out. These services can be very difficult to monitor, so we're going to just take you back to La Crosse And while we're on La Crosse, so I'm going to just tell you a little bit of the updates for the shooting there that we know in Minneapolis. As we said, the two children who were killed, ages 8 and 10, were at the school there. They were in prayer when the shots rang out. 17 people were injured. Among those, many of those were children. At least 10 of them were children. Actually, we were hearing 15 children between the ages of 16 and 15 were among those that were injured. 3 adult parishioners were also wounded. The shooter has been identified. 23-year-old Robin Westman, as I mentioned, died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. 3 firearms were recovered, and police said the shooter, again, did act alone. Last night we heard from our sister station there that there was a manifesto. The words of that manifesto, what was in that, have not been revealed yet, but again, that will glean presumably some light onto the motive and what may have happened. The suspect in the shooting, we did hear a little bit of background, was often sent to the principal's office for some disciplinary discussions. We had heard from that. And we also heard that the suspect's mother, Mrs. Westman, who worked at Annunciation Catholic Church and expressed concern about her child's behavior and social issues, former employees had said. But as we reported last night, years later, the suspect's mother told a former employee that Robin, the gunman, had come out as transgender and wanted to be identified as a girl. And we had heard last night that the mother actually went to take the legal action to help Robin be identified as a girl. And so we know that the mother knew, and that, again, with that transaction, that there was some support. So we don't know, again, what the motivation was, but we haven't heard from the mother. Perhaps we will hear more when we see that manifesto and when that is made available to the public. Obviously, law enforcement combing over that just to make sure that they get every piece of information out of that. We do not have an update on the 17 injuries from the shooting yesterday. We are waiting for that. But again, and we do not know the identity of the 2 children that were killed, the 8 and the 10-year-old. But again, we are waiting for word on that. The suspect, as I said, was identified as Robin Westman, and our Fox affiliate is digging into information about that suspect. But the Minneapolis mayor there, Jacob Fry, says they are actively still monitoring the situation. There doesn't appear to be any threat to the public, as the shooter did act alone. And obviously there is security there, extra security, as you can imagine, in that area. And of course, all schools getting the grief counseling that they need. Just a terrible day there in Minneapolis. But again, it is nice to see a show of support. We're trying to get that memorial back, and community members gathering just to basically say, you know, you're not alone. And that basically, you know, we are here for you, because there's going to be a lot of emotional healing as kids head back to the classroom. There's going to be a lot of talk about what we do in active shooting situations. No doubt, Vice President J.D. Vance, when he takes the stage, will talk about manufacturing jobs, but likely, you would assume, make mention of this terrible shooting in Minneapolis, because that has just been the talk of, obviously, the last day. Minneapolis in Mourning is the title of the day now, after those students were killed. We are hearing that 1 child remains in critical condition. Again, we don't know the updates of the children that were injured, but 1 is in critical condition at this point. And so we'll continue to watch that. And we also are hearing that the investigation right now is turning to Westman kind of solely. And we are hearing, again, this is unconfirmed, but we are hearing that the shooter that had been identified likely visited the church weeks ago to plan out or carry out the attack. And so it's just interesting, again, when that manifesto becomes public, what we will learn from there. Lastly, before we go to break, we heard from our White House secretary, press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, as we started this half hour, reaffirming that the FBI is investigating the shooting as a hate crime at Annunciation Catholic School. Even the local police say they don't have that clear motive. The FBI and the White House confirming this is a hate crime. So the investigation will continue to go on, and hopefully we understand some motivation here as the days and the hours unfold. J.D. Vance expected to take the stage any minute now. So as we await the vice president, we're going to keep our eye here on La Crosse. We'll also be keeping an eye on Minneapolis, and we'll also be keeping an eye on the forecast and on the roads for the big holiday weekend coming up. Giving an update on all that right after we take a quick break. Stay with us.
That used to happen to me in my first market. Dude, it would throw me off. I would just take off the ice.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Thursday to you. Mary Stoker-Smith coming at you live here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. We have been covering Minneapolis today. We've been taking you out to Washington, D.C. and then Minneapolis to get an update on the tragic shooting yesterday in Minneapolis. We continue to get information, watch the situation, and if anything develops with the prayer service that is going on now, I see that we have a picture. We'll take you back there. But in the meantime, let's keep it right back here in southeastern Wisconsin because, as you know, school bell is ringing. It's about to ring. The desks are getting cleared off, the pencils sharpened. Do they still use pencils? I don't know. I'm about to ask our friendly reporter that I see here, our friend Abril Preciado. She is standing by live right there. I'm going to dip in right now, Abril, and get to you because before we get to, there we go. Abril, can you hear me?
Excuse me? Sorry, what was that?
Yeah. Abril, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, yeah, I just asked if we still use pencils. I'm not sure. I said the pencils are about to be sharpened, but I wasn't sure if we still use pencils in the classroom.
At least I would. If I had to come back to school, I would. I'm old school like that, too.
I am, too. I said,
yes.
we're going to talk to you because I said, the school bell's going to ring. And I'm like, wait, the school bell still is ringing. People. My favorite part of going back to school, we had a box back in the day. A little paper box, and we got crayons, and then we got the pencil and the pencil sharpener, and the crayons, and the pencil sharpener. They all smelled so good. The eraser. So I didn't want to date myself.
I had those too as a kid, I had those too it's just some little nostalgia we're sharing from our back to school days. But yes, definitely a lot of hype. There's a lot of excitement that comes with back to school, as we know.
Yeah.
Obviously here at Milwaukee Public Schools, the start of the school year is on Tuesday, so literally all hands are on deck, and that's what we were able to see out here. I got a little too excited there, Mary. But yeah, that's what we saw right here at Milwaukee Marshall High School. We were able to kind of get like a tour and a view of the different classrooms, the setups, and how they're getting ready to receive the new students and receive even like returning students back on campus on Tuesday. And once again, this is just one of the I think it's like several schools out here in Milwaukee Public Schools. And obviously during the tour, we also were able to see Mayor Cavalier Johnson present, as well as Dr. Caselius, which is the MPS superintendent, and other local leaders and educational leaders too, that were pretty much just talking about the new school year. Obviously, some of the main topics that they discussed were the lead abatement. They gave us a brief update as well regarding it, as well as the flooding from the schools and how that's going. And most importantly, especially with what happened, the tragedy that happened in Minneapolis just yesterday, we were also discussing school security and the efforts that they're taking. I know one of the things that Dr. Caselius told us during our one-on-one interview is that they're working with their SROs right now to continue to find new ways to implement new security measures. She explained that they already have some implemented, but obviously with the events that happened yesterday, they're still working on trying to find more ways to continue to develop those security factors and just enhance the security within the school grounds in all MPS schools. And obviously the lead abatement, they said that they're currently right now on track when it comes to addressing the lead in the different schools. For the most part, from what Dr. Caselius was telling us during the press conference, is that they have been dealing with, I believe, 50 I'll have to look through my notes, really. I have a lot, but 50 schools, I believe, that they have addressed during the summer. They hope to complete the rest during the school year. So by the end of the school year, they're able to complete that. And obviously, as we know, it's been something huge that MPS has been trying to tackle down since this previous school year. So that's definitely something that's on their radar, and they're still continuously looking at that. And as well as the asbestos that were also found at some of the schools as well. Dr. Caselius was also telling us that they're currently still addressing some. They hired some experts that are that do have that expertise when it comes to removing the asbestos and addressing them, and they won't allow students and staff to return back to those buildings or those schools until it is fully cleared by the health department. So obviously that is something that is still in the process of getting addressed and being worked on as we speak. But right now it seems like everything is going right on track for the most part. There's a lot of exciting new programs that are also coming to Milwaukee Public Schools. Another thing that Dr. Caselius also mentioned during the press conference is that literacy is among their top priorities this school year, bringing up those literacy scores. And they're implementing a lot of new programs to help children and students, obviously, with getting those up as well. And yeah, among other cool new projects that are coming along the way. Another cool thing that I think will be very visual for folks to see, and students as well, and families, is that a couple of the schools will have new improvements to their gyms and to facilities, athletic facilities that they have on their campuses. So obviously some cool things to come back to school too.
Absolutely. You know, Abril, you talked about this, like I'm looking at, you've covered the lead abatement, you've covered the asbestos, and I mean, ride or die, school starts on Tuesday, September 2nd. So was there any, during this 11 o'clock press conference, was there any mention that they may not be ready? I mean, from everything that we're hearing, you know, parents, everybody needs to know, wheels up, and, you know, there's no pausing. I mean, she said, we will be ready.
Yeah, she says that as of right now, it looks like most of the schools will be able to go back to school again. Those schools that are currently still getting tested, from what Dr. Caselius told us, is that they're still waiting for those testings. They're getting tested as we speak, and they won't allow those students or staff to enter the building until that is cleared by the health department. And as mentioned, as she also mentioned, is the fact that they will also obviously notify parents and students and staff once that's made and once that has been verified as well and confirmed and cleared out.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to ask
that was
you.
so redundant.
I have to ask you too about. You talked about getting the kids kind of mentally prepared and getting some tools to help them grow. One of the bigger things that came out during a recent press conference with Superintendent Caselius was the truancy rate. And, you know, the numbers have always been there. But again, to hear them reiterated that Milwaukee Public Schools has a problem with attendance. And she was saying we're looking at about a 50% truancy rate or a 50% attendance rate. That is alarming. Those numbers are alarming. Kids can't learn unless they're in the classroom. And obviously for these kids, falling even a little bit behind, as we saw during the pandemic, can have a ripple effect on their advancement to the next level. Did they talk about tangible efforts to make sure that kids are in class?
You know, they did discuss the fact that, you know, they're working on efforts to try to continue to keep kids in school. One of them is by providing new different initiatives into their school, and to all of their school campuses, really. I believe one of the projects that was mentioned was providing I think it was menstrual kits for students as well, because that, even if it sounds as little and minimal, it does make a difference. As Dr. Caselius mentioned in the press conference, you know, sometimes it's little things like that that prevent students from even going to school or to missing out on school because they don't have that accessibility to resources like that, as simple as that, in their home. And that's also another way to have them come to school, look forward to school, and kind of, I guess, in a way, if you think about it, see okay, I have a place at school, it's a home, and if I need something, there's a resource there. So it's kind of making it, I guess, more so like a safe haven and a place so students can feel comfortable to do things like that or to seek resources like that. And I thought that was something really cool, actually, that was discussed during the press conference as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Abril. We really appreciate you being there right outside of the school there at Marshall for MPS. I'm a former college recruiter, and Marshall was always one of my favorites. The staff, the kids, I mean, it's awesome. We need to get them fired up to go back to class because this is such a fun time with pencils, not pads, pencils in hand. Right?
Exactly, yes, yes, exactly. Believe me, I am just walking in these hallways gave me so much nostalgia from high school and just being back at school. I'm like,
yeah,
I
know,
days,
I know.
Now we get to report on it.
Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun there. I got so excited. All right, Abril, thank you for that. You look like you're ready for back to class. We really appreciate that little preview. Thanks for being with us. All right, thank you. Yeah, it is. Can you believe it's almost here? It's almost time for that school bell to ring. But again, the classes will be ready, you know, on Tuesday for students to head back to class. We're going to shift gears right now and take you out to Brett Lemoyne because he's in Pewaukee right now. I'm going to pull up the shot right now, and we'll maybe be able to talk to Brett, but I want to take you to Pewaukee right now as we get ready to listen in here.
Over by the U.S.-born workers. Most people say that citizens will.
We're hearing about immigration right now. You see the slide right behind us with the 40% labor shortage in Wisconsin. And this is all centering around immigration
and hospitality. 90% of the fentanyl brought into the United States is driven in through the port of entry by a U.S. citizen. Data from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, and other federal agencies show that the vast majority of fentanyl comes through legal ports of entry. And 90% of the people bringing it into the country are American citizens, not illegal immigrants. Tara McGrath, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of California, said the American citizens have the ability to cross into borders and slip under the radar. McGrath dismissed the idea that immigrants and asylum seekers fleeing violence are the ones primarily bringing fentanyl into the country. Experts who study the transnational crime also dismiss the popular narrative linking migrants to drug smuggling. Mexican cartels control virtually all drug smuggling along the border, putting their product in the hands of desperate migrants risking life and limb to cross illegally is really bad for business, said Cecilia Farrin-Mendez, an expert on drug policy and organized crime at the Institute of Global Conflict and Cooperation. She also said, it would not make sense to put your merchandise in such a risky situation. Is this immigrant going to cross? Is he not going to cross? Is he going to be stopped? What's going to happen? Using the U.S. citizens' legal boarding crossers is much less risky, particularly in San Diego, she said. Experts say that linking migrants to drug smuggling is not only unproductive, it's dangerous. Adam Isaacson, Director of Defense Oversight for the Washington Office of Latin America, said, if you hear a politician say that fentanyl is being brought by migrants, all these people coming across the border seeking asylum, that is a mark of somebody who is actually not interested in solving the problem. That is a mark of somebody who is trying to get as much political advantage out of it, even though 100,000 Americans are dying each year from fentanyl. That false narrative distracts policymakers from seeking solutions, like installing non-invasive scanners at legal borders crossings to detect drugs hidden in vehicles. Last week, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security issued a statement that approximately 1.6 million undocumented immigrants had departed the country since Donald Trump resumed office in January. On Trump's White House website, he has 17 people listed with criminal activity. That's it. 17 people. I'm not sure if 1.6 immigrants were deported, as the Post complains, but just one family with no criminal history, just one family because of the color of their skin has been deported. That is one family too many. Children living in mixed status families are living in fear. A mixed status family includes members with varying immigration status. For instance, while the parents may be undocumented, the children are citizens born here in the United States. Based on 2022 data, 5.5 million US-born children were living in households with at least one undocumented resident and 1.8 million living in households with two undocumented parents. This is Arturo Vazquez and his son, Jorge and Brian.
You are listening to a press conference right now from the Immigration Task Force on Immigration Reform, and misspoke a little earlier. This is not Pewaukee. This is the Public Library in Waukesha. We wanted to let you know what's going on around the area. Listen in on that. If there are any new developments, we can come back to that. But for right now, we want to come back to Minneapolis right now, and I want to take you to some remarks that lawmakers are giving right now in light of yesterday's shooting. We are hearing from the mayor of Minneapolis. He was just at the podium right now, and so let's see if we can get him back on there. But there's just been so many memorials today, so many prayer services, really, really wonderful tributes to the victims and to the people who are still recovering there in Minneapolis. And so we want to make sure that we continue to monitor that situation for any new developments. Right now, lawmakers are meeting with, as you see there from the shirt, moms demanding action against gun violence. And we were hearing from the mayor a little earlier. He just stepped away from the podium. Let's see if we can listen in, if he will come back, or listen in to some of the speakers today.
Weapon was used. These are weapons of war, and they are tearing through our communities over and over again. We cannot call ourselves a free country when parents cannot send their kids to school without wondering if they will come home alive. And even for the children who survive, the trauma will live with them forever. All signs point to yesterday's shooting also being carried out with an assault weapon. These guns were designed for battlefields, not for our schools, not for our churches, and not for our neighborhoods. No civilian needs a gun that can fire dozens of rounds in seconds. These weapons exist for one purpose: to kill and wound as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. We've seen what happens time and again when assault weapons are used. And we also know what happens when they're banned. Lives are saved. When the federal assault weapons ban was in place, mass shootings went down. After it expired, they increased. We cannot afford more delay. Here in Minneapolis, this tragedy comes after 3 other deadly shootings in just 24 hours. Our city is in pain. Our state is in pain. And yet still, lawmakers at the state and federal levels refuse to do the one thing that could stop this: ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
And you have been listening to a press conference there, Moms Against Gun Violence. We've been hearing from the mayor there and from many lawmakers and their constituents and the public grieving the lives that were lost yesterday in that mass shooting. 2 young children killed, 17 others injured. One of the children that was injured remaining in critical condition. That was the last update. So we will continue to watch Minneapolis, look at any developments. Things are really kind of changing by the minute there. So we'll keep our eye on that. We are still awaiting J.D. Vance. He is in La Crosse right now, the vice president, expected to address that large crowd any minute. We'll continue to look at that, but we're going to take a quick break, come back to that, and then as I keep promising you, we're going to get to your all-important Labor Day forecast, because here's a hint. While pumpkin spice is nice, you may not need it this weekend. I'll explain when we come right back.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Welcome back, everybody. Great to have you along this bright Thursday afternoon here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We have a lot to get to today. We've been talking a lot about, of course, taking you to Minneapolis, and we just took you out to Waukesha. We're going to continue to look at lacrosse, and J.D. Vance expected to take the stage any moment now at a place in lacrosse called Mid-City Steel. He is expected to come at any moment, and the minute he does, we're going to do a quick turnaround. But for right now, I've been promising you a look at the weather right now, and I want to show you this. Because as we await for J.D. Vance and lacrosse, I know a lot of you are wondering about the forecast. Of course, the last hurrah of summer. At least that's what they call it. We still got plenty of summer left, right? So at this point, as we've heard from our weather experts, we had a cool off today, but look at those skies, beautiful skies right now. And as the weekend progresses, we are looking at a beautiful, beautiful stretch of weather. I'm going to take you over to this graphic right now. For those of you that like graphic precipitation right now, none of that is in our area. We are looking real good. We are looking real smooth. As we stand today, let's give you a look at some of the traffic times. If you are headed out and about, another Jazz in the Park tonight down to Cathedral Square. Maybe you're kicking off the long holiday weekend by doing some traveling. AAA is expecting this to be the busiest travel, one of the busiest travel holidays of the year. Traffic right now, as we look there at 45 at Capitol Drive, moving real smooth today. We thought maybe people would get a kick on the holiday weekend, an early jump on the long holiday weekend, but things are flowing smooth right now. In fact, let's take another look right now. Looks like there's a mattress over there on the side of the road, slowing things down just a little bit, but for the most part, it is smooth sailing. AAA experts recommending that if you are flying to get to the airport extra early, perhaps an hour, and if you are heading out on the road to travel, they were saying today would be a great day to go, but before noon, and by 3 o'clock they were saying that traffic could really pick up. Of course, tomorrow, will be a busy travel day as people try to get in this last couple days of vacation before school starts and we go back to work after the long Labor Day holiday. Let's give you a look right now over the city of Milwaukee. Beautiful. What a gorgeous day. A little crisp out there. For those of you who like the pumpkin spice and a crisp honey crisp apple, maybe a little apple cider, this is the day to do it until you switch to the lemonade. It's 71 degrees right now, but it's going to get a little bit cooler. Tom warned that afternoon we will be seeing a cold front at some point, because I was looking at trying to get a run this morning and I thought, oh no, is it going to be too cold? He said, well, noon will be good. At 1:24, we're sitting at 71 degrees right now, but that cool down will come a little bit later today. We are waiting for that, of course. Some people love it. Some people can't wait to bring out the fleece, crack open that window, and get that fresh air. So for you warm weather lovers, this is your last chance to get in a little something before we cool down. However, we are hearing and we are seeing from that extended forecast, things are going to be heating back up again. Let's try to get that forecast back up there. We take a look at that. If you're planning a picnic, a family outing, maybe a dip in the pool, it's not going to be too late in the season to do that, because we're looking at a great stretch of weather as we head into our holiday weekend. Nothing but blue skies right now. And after all of that significant historic flooding that we have seen here in southeastern Wisconsin, it's nice to see these blue skies, and it's nice to see things really clearing out there as we take a look at the graphic and we take a look at that beautiful, beautiful blue skies. Have you also noticed, I want to go back to the look at Milwaukee right now, we're not seeing any haze. This summer was plagued by so many hazy days where, we couldn't enjoy the weather fully, particularly those with respiratory issues, because we had that haze from the Canada wildfires. So it's nice to see the blue skies returning, especially for the holiday weekend. If you have plans, it looks like you are in the clear. It is wonderful to see that. So as we look at the weather, we're going to take you back to La Crosse, where the weather seems to be equally as lovely. We are waiting to hear from Vice President J.D. Vance any moment now. Looks as though we're doing a kind of a pull out there from our feed camera and just waiting for him to take the stage, where he is going to be talking about President Trump's big, beautiful bill. He's going to be talking about manufacturing jobs in Milwaukee, some of the jobs that really, again, La Crosse is known for historically being a manufacturing city right there, right along the Mississippi. It will be interesting to hear if they expect jobs to be added. Again, I'll talk a little bit about that area because it's my hometown. Was just there 2 weeks ago. And if you've traveled to La Crosse anytime soon, It's a lot different than it was back in the day, back when we had a lot of manufacturing downtown. But the downtown, like so many areas, has really seen a resurgence. They have built up lofts and apartments. Several hotels, at least 3, perhaps 4, have been added to the downtown area to attract conventions, to attract business dwellers, and really kind of bring in an infusion of money into the downtown area. The Mississippi has always been the marquee, with the bluffs serving as the backdrop there, especially if you've been up to Grandad Bluff, you know the beautiful view up there. But that area has really seen kind of a development. A couple of restaurants, new restaurants added there. So it will be interesting if they talk about the development there and how they plan to perhaps add to that by bringing jobs into the area, particularly manufacturing jobs there at Mid-City Steel, when they are using that as their place to address this, and perhaps what that area could see. We haven't seen J.D. Vance there in quite a while. And right now he's going to talk about manufacturing when he gets to the stage, but we haven't seen him there since pre-election. So this is his first trip back to the La Crosse area in just a little bit. The vice president is going to be highlighting specific things in President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill at this fabrication facility. And, you know, again, we've been waiting for him. We know that he got there a little bit earlier today. But as far as his remarks, they're keeping that kind of, you know, close to the vest. We don't know exactly what he will be talking about. We just know that he's going to basically highlight manufacturing. Again, been a while since he's been there. Pearl ice cream, one of the best downtown. If I could talk to him, besides the jobs, I'd want to know what places he's going to stop. Will he grab an ice cream at the Pearl, perhaps? Will he take a trip up to Grandad's Bluff to see that area, or maybe tour some of those new developments that we have seen downtown, restaurants, hotels, maybe just talking to the people there to find out what they're thinking in terms of what the city needs with job development. They were not hit with that historic flooding that we had here in southeastern Wisconsin, but there have been times that people who are living right along the Mississippi were really affected by flooding earlier in the season. It crested back at 4th of July. The waters were really high. Boaters were still able to get out there, but we were concerned that the 4th of July celebrations would be called off in La Crosse because of all the high water. So it'd be interesting to hear if they address any of those issues. Let's go ahead and listen in, because he's going to take the stage presumably any minute now. He was scheduled for 12:30. So let's go ahead and listen in and wait for Vice President J.D. Vance to hopefully take the stage at any moment now. So let's listen in the meantime.
And it's Representative Derek Van Orden right here. Stand up, Derek. And if any of you are taking care of aging parents, any of you that know people that are seniors, I'll say that because you all look pretty young to me out there. But anyway, if you know anybody that's on Social Security, 1.1 million senior citizens in Wisconsin are now going to benefit from no taxes on Social Security. So incredible. So what's the quick summary? We've got lower taxes. We have far lower regulations. It's the biggest tax cut in history. Regulations are being cut by this administration like never before, allowing innovation to flourish. And then you say, okay, well, those two things are great, but what about fresh capital coming into the company? Well, with President Trump leveling the trade field and making it, getting a level playing field for America so we can sell our goods into markets that used to be closed. And for those people that are coming here, they're going to have to pay tariffs to get in. When you do that, there's trillions of dollars. $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. There's over $5 trillion of committed capital that's coming into this country to build new factories here, because when you build it in America, when it's made in America, there are no tariffs. We've never had the combination of these things happening in my lifetime of lower taxes, way less regulation, support for innovation and entrepreneurs, and record amounts of record capital. These are the policies that are going to restore the American dream for every American, and it's the Trump-Vance administration that's making that happen. And if you're planning on driving someplace this weekend, maybe you want to, head to one of those great national places in this state like St. Croix National Scenic Riverway, not far away from here, Apostle National Islands up by the National Lakeshore on the Apostle Islands up by Bayfield where my cousins live. You know, if you're heading to do that, guess what? You're going to be paying the lowest gas prices in many, many years this weekend. But inflation adjusted, these are the lowest gas prices in decades. And so, again, thanks to President Trump for making that happen. So, in closing, I wanted to say, you know, one of the other action-oriented presidents we had that's can be thought about in the same sentence as President Trump is Theodore Roosevelt. And Theodore Roosevelt said, far and away the best prize in life is the opportunity to work hard at work worth doing. And I've got a group of people sitting behind me on the stage that work very hard. I got a group of people in front of me that I know, if you're here from Wisconsin, you're from the Midwest, you have spent your life working very hard. All of us then in this room, everybody here, we've all had a chance to grab that prize, that opportunity to work hard at work we're doing. And collectively, at a place like here, like Mid-City Steel, you're doing the hard work that is making America great and making America strong. And you need to know that President Trump personally, Vice President Vance, who's here to tell you how grateful they are for the working families and the working people of this country. So it's my honor right now to introduce someone who served our country in the military, in the Marine Corps. He's served our country in the United States Senate. Now he's fighting for working families as the Vice President of the United States. Please welcome to the stage, J.D. Vance.
Crowd of onlookers. So let's listen to the Hollies and then listen to Vice President Vance.
Thank you all. We love you all. Thank you all, Wisconsin. It's great to be here. We have a great looking crowd here. Thank you all. It's the best looking group of welders and steelmen and women I've seen in my entire life, I think. This is a sharp crew. Now, everybody behind me, I was told, volunteered to be there, and so you guys have to clap and cheer at everything that I say, and if not, we're going to have to kick you the hell out of here. And a couple of them actually, and I'm not going to call them out by name, but they were selected because they're some of the hardest working and best working people in this facility, and we just want to say we're proud of you guys, proud of what you do, and proud that the tradition of Wisconsin craftsmanship lives on in this great facility right here today. Now, before we get started here, and I want to talk about the big, beautiful bill, I want to give a few notes of appreciation and gratitude. So, first of all, I think this is probably the third or fourth time I've been to La Crosse, Wisconsin. I came here a lot during the campaign. It was always great to be here, and I joked that you all would get sick of me, but I would come back as Vice President of the United States, and I'm proud that I got to keep that promise, thanks to you. So I want to thank Paul Bagnevsky. Paul, thank you so much. I got it A- maybe on that pronunciation. He is the president and CEO of this incredible facility. We're so thankful to be here. I want to thank Jake Koshiol and the rest of the Tough Job team for giving us such a warm welcome here in Wisconsin. I also want to thank, and you heard Doug Burgum, our great Secretary of the Interior. How good of a job is Doug Burgum doing as Secretary of the Interior? Doug, thank you. Doug is doing a great job, but you heard him give a shout out, and I'm going to give another shout out to the great Representative Derek Van Orden. Thank you, Derek. Please stand up. Give it up for this guy. He works harder. He works harder than anybody in Congress. He works so hard that he lost most of his hair, in fact, over his time in Congress. I'm sorry about that. I had to poke a little fun at my good friend Derek, but you know, there are so many people who just show up in Washington. They go along to get along. They cast a vote or don't, but don't really do much else. Derek is fighting every single day for the people of this district. You should be proud of him, because I certainly am. Thank you, Derek. And I guess we've got the senior class from Luther High School. Where are all the Luther High School students? Where are you all at? Thank you all. Now, have you all started school yet, or are you playing hooky today? You have. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad the vice president coming to town got you guys out of school a little bit. But let's talk about the future, because these kids are the future. We want to make sure that they have a prosperous American future to grow up in. And let me take you back a little bit to where I grew up in Middletown, Ohio, southwestern Ohio, where my papaw, and the reason I love the welders in particular, is my papaw for 42 years was a union welder at a place called Armco Steel. And when I was growing up, Armco Steel had shed about 80% of the workforce that it had employed when my papaw was working there during its heyday. And unfortunately, it was one of the lucky ones, because a lot of the steel mills lost about 80% of their workforce. A lot of the steel mills didn't exist at all. And I think that what happened is that for those of us who grew up in those factory towns, we were so used to seeing those proud, big, beautiful factories, seeing the night sky lit up with that furnace. We were proud of what our parents and our grandparents made every single day, and of course they were proud to earn the kind of a job that enabled them to provide us a good life. And what happened? Thanks to a generation of failed politicians and stupid decisions, those factories closed down one by one by one, and many of those proud towns that made us who we are, ladies and gentlemen, those proud towns became ghost towns. Well, not anymore. What the President of the United States was elected on a promise to do was to bring back American manufacturing, to bring back American craftsmanship, and that is exactly what President Donald Trump is doing every single day in Washington. How nice is it to have a president who, instead of rewarding companies for shipping your jobs overseas, rewards companies for building factories right here in the United States of America? How nice is it to have a president of the United States who, instead of raising your taxes, is cutting your taxes by historic margins every single day, as we just did? For years, American leaders would ask you to work overtime, would ask you to spend even more time away from your family, and every hour that you spent at the job, they would reach further and further into your pocket. How nice is it to have a president of the United States who cut taxes on overtime, because we believe that if you spend an extra hour at work, the government ought to keep its hands the hell out of your pocket. Is that right? We know about 5%, about 1 in 20 Wisconsin workers rely on tips to bring home the bacon for themselves and their families. How nice is it to have a president of the United States and Republican majorities in Congress that cut taxes on tips instead of forcing our waitresses and service professionals to deal with the IRS. We ought to make it easier for folks to get by, which is exactly what we did when we cut taxes on tips, and Wisconsin families are going to be the beneficiaries. What the working families tax cuts did is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. It let you keep more money in your pocket. It rewarded you for building a business or working at a business right here in the United States of America. It makes it easy for you to take home more of your hard-earned pay, and it makes it easier. If you're an American manufacturer or an American business, it makes it easier for you to build your facility or expand your facility right here in the United States of America. I happen to believe that it's the dumbest decision we made as a country to reward foreign companies with putting stuff overseas instead of right here in places like Wisconsin. Well, now we have a different president with a different attitude. If you're building in the United States of America, if you're working in the United States of America, if you're trying to earn a decent living right here at home, we are going to fight for you every single day. But if you build crap overseas and try to undercut the wages of American workers, you're going to pay a big fat tariff before you bring it back in to the United States of America. Now, I was talking with a Fox News host earlier, and I'm going to embarrass him a little bit. I'm going to make him stand up and be recognized. You guys know Will Kane. Will, A lot of us watch the show. He's doing a good job. You know, what I told Will earlier is that all these problems are interconnected. Why is it that we allowed these Mexican drug cartels to bring this poisonous fentanyl into our communities? Why is it that so many people lost hope and started taking that fentanyl? Why is it that we had a government that seemed to care more about illegal immigrants than they did about their own citizens? It's all connected. Because when they shipped your job overseas in the last administration or in administrations that came before it, what they also did at the same time is they allowed those cartels to come in to our country and take advantage of our communities. So what the working class families tax cut does is, yes, it gives you more take-home pay. Yes, it cuts taxes on overtime. Yes, it cuts taxes on tips. But it also gives our incredible law enforcement over $100 billion to get those drug cartels the hell out of our country once and for all. It's very simple. Donald Trump's Republican Party wants very simple things for this country. We want you to be able to earn a good living in your community. We want you to be able to walk down a city street in broad daylight without getting mugged. We want you to be able to take your family out to a nice meal wherever you want to without the fear of violence from criminals, whether they're domestic criminals or international drug cartels. If you work hard every single day, you ought to take as much of your hard-earned pay home as possible. And if you want to raise your children in security and comfort, you ought to send them to a school that gives them a good education instead of an indoctrination. These are very simple things, ladies and gentlemen, and all we needed was better leadership in Washington to deliver it. Now, Representative Van Orden will tell you this, but if you didn't know, that it turned out that we didn't get a single Democrat vote for cutting taxes on tips, cutting taxes on overtime, or increasing the child tax credit. Not a single Democrat in the House or the Senate could actually deign to vote for giving you more of your hard-earned money. And we got to ask ourselves why that is. Because as much as I am proud of what we've accomplished, it would honestly be a little bit easier, wouldn't it, Derek, if the Democrats actually worked with us instead of fighting us every single step of the way. And you're going to see this. We're a little early for campaign season, but in a couple months or maybe about a year, you're going to start seeing television advertisements. And you're going to start seeing Democrats lying about what's in these working families tax cuts. And I'm going to tell you exactly what they're going to say. They're going to tell you that this bill, which gives you more of your hard-earned money, that they opposed it, not because they want to raise your taxes, and they do, but because they're worried about your health care. They are so worried about your health care, in fact, that they want to give more and more of your health care to illegal immigrants. And that's exactly why they voted against this bill. I know we have this beautiful high school class back there. And I'll give you, just from a vice president to the high school seniors, I'll give you guys just a little bit of relationship advice from a man who's been happily married for 11 years. Find yourself somebody who loves you as much as national Democrats love giving health care benefits to illegal aliens. That's my advice for you. Because it is, as far as I can tell, the reason why the National Democratic Party exists. Do you know that this bill makes tens of billions of dollars in investments in our rural health care infrastructure, which was falling apart under the last administration? This legislation guarantees that hardworking Americans are going to have access to their Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid benefits. What this bill refuses to do, and what Republicans absolutely refuse to do, is to give your hard-earned benefits to people who don't have the legal right to be in this country to begin with. It is very simple. And if you want to protect the people's benefits, if you want to protect rural health care, if you want to make sure that whether you live in a big city or a small town, you have the ability to go and see a doctor, and that is exactly what we want to do, then the first thing you ought to be doing is making sure that the people who get federal health care benefits actually have the right to be in this country in the first place. That is the first and most important step. And that's what this legislation did. So don't believe the lies and don't believe the attacks. What we are doing with this legislation is giving you a tax cut and trying to rebuild the healthcare infrastructure of this country that got decimated under Joe Biden's leadership. But what we are also doing, in order to preserve the benefits that you've paid into for your entire lives, is making sure those benefits only go to our fellow American citizens and not to people who ought to go back to their home country because they're here in this country illegally. It's very simple. And think about this. Think about the math, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot have these health care benefits if you allow tens of millions of people into this country who have no legal right to be here and give them those benefits. We were on the freight train to bankruptcy under Joe Biden's leadership because we had a Democratic Party that didn't care enough about this country to actually enforce our borders. And it's that simple. And so when I see the Democrats, I got to be honest with you, it makes me a little bit angry. When I see Democrats fighting against cutting your taxes and saying it's about health care, it's not about health care for you, it's about health care for illegal aliens. And we happen to believe in a different principle. You ought to keep more of your hard-earned money. That if you work overtime, you ought to be rewarded for it. And that when you pay into the federal system, you receive those benefits and not anybody who didn't pay into them to begin with. So, let me say just a couple more things, and then I'll hit the road, but maybe I'll take some questions. Should we take some questions from the fake news, ladies and gentlemen? Would that be fun? Okay, we can do that too, but we'll try to focus on the local Wisconsin reporters first, because I know that they're not fake news, right? We got good local reporters here in Wisconsin? I don't know, mixed reviews based on the crowd here, but let me just say a couple more things. So this business, this manufacturing facility, I think represents the future of American craftsmanship. And I was talking to the CEO and to Jake earlier about this, but you know, there's this attitude that some people have that manufacturing, it's the jobs of the past, it's the industry of the past, that it's dirty, that it's not innovative. Why? I challenge any journalist to walk around this facility for 10 minutes and not realize that this is one of the most innovative companies in America, and this is the future of American industry, the future of American innovation, and the future of American manufacturing. They're using artificial intelligence in this facility. They're using robotics in this facility. They're doing things that, frankly, were not even possible 20 years ago, and they're doing them in order to build a great American future. We are practically a stone's throw away from a beautiful new bridge, a bridge that is being built with American-made steel from this manufacturing facility because we have great American craftsmen right here in Wisconsin, and we ought to fight for them. And I know the people out in the crowd, the people standing behind me, there are stories of proud work being done every single day. There are stories of a good wage being earned that allows these folks to support their families. There's stories of products that exist in the United States of America that we need, that we absolutely rely on, that are made right here with American workers and American hands. That makes me so proud to be your vice president, to get to stand here, to get to see a little bit of it, to take a little tour, to recognize that the American future that our children deserve, that the American future that our children rely on is going to be built by and for American workers, and you guys are the proudest American workers in that tradition. So God bless you, and thank you. And these guys, they're proud of what they do. They're doing something amazing. They're doing something that can't be done almost anywhere else in the world. They're earning a good wage in the process. This is what makes America great. And I love my papaw. I said he was a union welder for 42 years. He was a proud man. He was a hard-working man. But my papaw, before he died, he used to tell me that, you know, he didn't know that American manufacturing was going to be as strong in the future as it was in his time. And again, I love my papaw, but I think that's the wrong attitude. American manufacturing must be as strong in the future, or America's future will not exist without it. Do you think that our kids are going to have a future if we rely on foreign countries to make everything that we need? Do you think we're going to have a future if the pharmaceuticals that we put into the bodies of our children are made by a foreign adversary? Do you think we have a future if we can't even drive over a bridge without asking permission from some foreign country? That is no way to build a future. The way to build a future is with American workers, and I'm proud that in Wisconsin that's exactly what we're doing. So God bless you all. And I want to say just one final thing, and I'm going to end this on a somber note. We've had some fun here, but I am very mindful of the fact that we're just a couple of minutes away from the Minnesota border. And of course, we had this terrible, terrible school shooting yesterday in Minneapolis. And I imagine, like a lot of you all, it hits pretty close to home, very personally, because though you may not know anybody who's affected by it, I think a lot of us know people who've been taking their kids in the last couple of weeks to their first day of school. And in fact, my son, my little 5-year-old, I love him so much, and if you're watching, buddy, Daddy loves you. He started his first day of kindergarten just 2 days ago. And again, we're very proud of him, and we love him very much, but I know that there are a lot of families who were in their first week of school just outside of Minneapolis, and that was pierced. That incredibly pure and wonderful moment was pierced by a very vicious and a very evil person. And so I just want to say a couple of things. The first thing that I want to say is, remember, we're an American family. And the people who lost children, they are your fellow Americans. And those children who lost their lives and lost their future, they are your fellow citizens. So think about them and say a prayer for them. And remember that they are as much us as our neighbors right here in this wonderful community in Wisconsin. And the thing that they need most of all is they need their fellow Americans to reach out and care about them. And I know that every single one of us is going to do that. That's the first thing that I wanted to say. The second thing that I wanted to say is, when I first heard the news, I was worried that the death toll was going to be higher based on what the media reports were saying. And right now, there are still a couple of kids, some of whom in very critical condition, who may yet survive this. And I think they would appreciate your prayers, and their families would appreciate your prayers as well. So if you are the praying type, I'd ask you to say a prayer tonight for those kids that are still recovering, that they may recover fully and go on to live a full life, the life that was deprived from a couple of their classmates. And, you know, the stories, I'd encourage you to read some of the stories about what happened yesterday, about the violence, about the fact that you had 10-year-old kids laying over their friends to look after them and to try to protect them. And while yesterday was an unspeakable tragedy, I'd ask you to remember that we also saw the very best of the United States of America. And to every person who protected a friend, to every first responder, to every paramedic who made it so the death toll wasn't higher, we love you, we're proud of you, and we'll never forget the great American spirit that you showed yesterday. And on that note, there's going to be time for politics, and there's going to be a time to figure out how to prevent this stuff from happening, how to make these shootings less common in our country. And I'm not going to speak about that now, but I would encourage you, the First Lady, Melania, who really has a very big heart for children, obviously as a mother herself, she put out a statement earlier today that I think is really worth taking a look at, because this happens too much in our country. And if you look, we really do have, I think, a mental health crisis in the United States of America. We take way more psychiatric medication than any other nation on earth, and I think it's time for us to start asking some very hard questions about the root causes of this violence. And I'm going to be part of that, and the First Lady and the President are going to be part of that, but that's going to be an American conversation that we're going to have together. But before we have that conversation, if you are the praying type, I would ask you to join me in prayer. I'm just going to say a prayer for the two little kids who lost their lives yesterday. And this is a prayer we say a lot in my church, and I've always found it very meaningful. It's very short. But eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May the souls of all the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen. Thank you all. Now with that, I will take some questions from the reporters, but again, thank you all for having me, and thank you all for indulging that moment. I think it's important for our fellow Americans to know that we're reaching our arms around them and we love them, and you guys gave me the opportunity to do that, and so I'm grateful for it. God bless you. Questions?
Caden Perry, La Crosse Tribune, local reporter. I'm curious, a lot of investments in the steel industry in this nation, especially the signing of the Nippon and U.S. Steel merger in Pennsylvania, a lot of those investments seem to be going to the Rust Belt and major corporations there. Can you point to something in your policy that will help small businesses like this and others that are maybe outside of the conventional areas for the Rust Belt?
Yeah, so first of all, by ensuring that facilities like this have access to great American-made steel, we make sure they're never going to get cut off. And I talked to the CEO about this earlier. We make sure that they're always going to have the supplies necessary to do the business that they need to do. And that's a very important thing, because as we learned during the COVID pandemic, when you rely on foreign countries to make your critical supply, sometimes those foreign countries don't work. You can't depend on them. We can depend on our fellow Americans, and that's why it's so important, big corporation and small, to bring this stuff back to the United States. But you ask, what is going to help this small business? Well, first of all, the workers here, when they work an overtime shift, are not going to have to pay taxes on those overtime hours. That's going to help the workers and consequently the business right here in this facility. But also, you heard Secretary Burgum talk about this earlier. When a plant like this makes a big investment, we want to make that pay in the tax code. We don't want to penalize them for investing in American workers and American production. And the working families tax cut, you know what it does? It completely accelerates depreciation, so that when they make a big investment, when they buy a big amount, when they buy a big new facility or they buy a big new piece of equipment, they can immediately benefit from that in the tax code. And it's such a reversal from what we've had in this country for 40, 50 years, where we would penalize companies in the tax code for building and making in the United States of America. Under President Trump's leadership, we're rewarding companies in the tax code for building and making right here at home. Next question.
Good afternoon. Charles Benson with TMJ4 out of Milwaukee. As you know, the President this week signed an executive order around the National Guard. And so I'm curious if you can give us some more detail on that, wanting the National Guard members to be available for rapid mobilization and establish a quick reaction force. My question would be, would that quick reaction force be deployed to help with day-to-day police work, and would a governor, like the governor of Wisconsin, have the option to say no to any deployment nationwide?
Well, let me say a few things about this. First of all, the principle at stake here is very simple. Americans ought to feel safe on American streets. How many of us... How many of us have crossed to the other side of the street because there's a person on the street corner yelling and screaming at our kids or at our family? How many people have felt scared to walk down the street of an American neighborhood in daylight or at night because those streets are considered no-go zones? How ridiculous is it that we ever let there be no-go zones on streets paid for by American taxpayers? You bought those streets. You ought to be able to enjoy them as American citizens. It's very, very simple. So that is the principle at stake here. And in Washington, D.C., let's step back a little bit. Washington, D.C. got to a point where it was having a murder more than every other day. The national capital of the most powerful nation in the history of the world had a murder every other day, carjackings, armed robberies that rival literal third world countries, and the President of the United States said, this is America's city and enough is enough, and he deployed the National Guard to fix it. Now, that was the right decision at the time, but I don't know how anybody can look at the results over the last 14 days and say anything other than thank God Donald Trump did what he did, because armed robberies, carjackings, murders are down between 40 to 90%. Even the very Democratic mayor of D.C. said yesterday that she was grateful for the additional police presence because it made it possible for people, Americans, black, white, rich, and poor, to enjoy the nation's capital again. And that's what I want. I mean, all of you, Washington, D.C. is your town. You literally built it with your tax dollars. You should be able to come and go to one of these beautiful museums or see one of these incredible monuments without fear that you're going to get mugged. And that's what we have changed in just a short period of time. And you asked the Wisconsin-specific question. What the president has said is that, very simply, we want governors and mayors to ask for the help. The President of the United States is not going out there forcing this on anybody, though we do think that we have the legal right to clean up America's streets if we want to. But what the President has said is very simply is, why don't you invite us in? Is Milwaukee a super safe city right now? It's had some crime problems. It's a beautiful city. There are a lot of beautiful, incredible, hardworking people who live there, but let's be honest, Milwaukee has had some crime problems. So have other parts of our community. Chicago, I know we're not too far from Chicago. Chicago's had a lot of crime problems. Why is it that you have mayors and governors who are angrier about Donald Trump offering to help them than they are about the fact that their own residents are being carjacked and murdered in the streets? It doesn't make an ounce of sense. And the last... And the last point that I'll make about this, sir, is, I'm going to violate the advice I gave to the President of the United States yesterday, because we were having lunch yesterday, and the President said, JD, I don't know how I did it. I have actually got the Democrats to come out in defense of crime. And it is crazy. If Donald Trump came out tomorrow and said he really likes puppies, you would have AOC come out and say puppies are terrible. So you have Donald Trump, who has reduced murders, carjackings, and armed robberies in 14 days in Washington, D.C., and now you have national Democrats coming out and saying, oh, well, we love murders and carjackings and armed robberies. Why won't Democrats just use some common sense? We're going to disagree about stuff from time to time. I'm sure Democrats want higher taxes and I want lower taxes. We may disagree about some foreign policy issues, but on this basic principle that murdering people, armed robberies, carjackings are bad, wouldn't it be nice if the Democrats just worked a little across the aisle for once? Next question.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Matt Smith, WISN TV in Milwaukee. To what you just said, Milwaukee's mayor the other day said absolutely not to any talk of National Guard troops. Would the administration consider ever coming into a city like Milwaukee?
Well, again, we want to be invited into Milwaukee. We want to help people. We want to help our fellow citizens. And we think that if you look at the crime rates, if you look at the murders in Milwaukee, if you look at certain neighborhoods where people are unafraid to go out even in the middle of the day, we would love to come and help the people of Milwaukee. But the President of the United States has said he wants to be asked. And that has been his consistent line from the very beginning, that we have an incredible law enforcement capability in the United States. You know what's crazy about crime? Is most of the violent crime is committed by a very small number of people. When we talk about a violent crime problem, we're not talking about thousands upon thousands of people in Milwaukee. We're talking about a few hundred people who probably commit 90% of the violent crime. We would love to come in and help lock up those violent criminals. I hope the mayor of Milwaukee gets some common sense and actually fights for her residents for a change, or his residents for a change, because we would love to actually help cut down on the crime in this community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Anthony DeBruzzi, Spectrum News, Wisconsin. Sticking with Milwaukee, but a little different. Yesterday, Governor Tony Evers requested a disaster declaration from President Trump after the historic flooding that we've seen in the Milwaukee area. So can Wisconsinites count on the administration for financial help through this?
Yeah, so obviously, look, we want to help people, and we want to help our fellow citizens, and I know that Wisconsin has suffered some serious problems. I have not talked to the President of the United States. I'm not even sure that he's aware yet that the governor has issued that disaster declaration, but I will take that back to Washington, D.C. and make sure we respond to it promptly. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. Daniel Gomez, WEAU in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So I see that you've been touring around the country, visiting congressional battleground districts. No different here, Wisconsin's third. You're here also garnering up some support for Derek Van Orden. So my question here is, can we expect you again next year when we actually get to the midterm elections? And will you also address other issues in Wisconsin's third district, which include agriculture, childcare, healthcare, and all these other things that impact rural, hardworking, working class Wisconsinites here?
Of course. Well, do you all want to have me back next year? Is that okay? All right. Look, so long as the people of the 3rd District will have me, yes, I will keep on coming back and keep on talking about the issues that matter. You asked about agriculture, I think rural health care, and also child care. Look, if you look at the working families tax cut, there's a lot there for agriculture. There's a lot. For example, if you buy a new tractor, you buy a new piece of farm equipment, wouldn't it be nice if you were rewarded in the tax code instead of penalizing the tax code? Well, now, thanks to the working families tax cut, you are going to be rewarded, which is why the farmers were really big and supportive and behind the legislation. We had such great support from our farming community in Wisconsin and all over the country for this legislation, I think in part because it does a lot for our farmers. You asked about health care. Look, rural health care in this country is in bad shape. It was left in bad shape by the previous administration, and this legislation, the Working Families Tax Cut, has got tens of billions of dollars to shore up our rural health care system. It is so unusual to hear Democrats say this is going to be bad for health care when we're spending billions of dollars to try to fix some of the rural health care problems in our country. And by the way, has anybody been awake for the last 4 years? Any of these national Democrats? How was the rural health care system doing under Joe Biden when you had hospitals and clinics closing at a record and alarming rate? We're trying to fix that. We want people to be able to access to health care, but we want American citizens to be able to access health care, and that's what makes us different from the National Democrat Party. And I'll take maybe a couple more questions, then we're going to hit the road.
Hi, thank you so much for taking questions from us. My name is Laura Schulte. I'm a reporter with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. You've talked a little bit, about the disaster declaration, but I'm wondering, how long will Milwaukee have to wait for a disaster declaration from President Trump?
Well, if I understood the question correctly, and this is the first time that I'm hearing about it, we got the request from the governor yesterday. Is that right? Okay, so I mean, it's very possible that request has not even made it to the president's desk. I mean, these things sometimes take more than 12 hours before they get to the president's desk. So what I can promise you is now that I'm aware of it, we're going to take a look at it. We're going to make sure that it gets the review that it requires. And look, we love Wisconsin. We love all of our American citizens. People are struggling. We recognize that, and we want to figure out ways to help them. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, Adam Roberts, News Radio WTMJ, also out of Milwaukee. A follow-up to that question as well. I know that you still have time to make this decision, but can you explain why President Trump or yourself did not tour the southeast Wisconsin area like was done in Texas after their historic flooding?
Yeah, I can give you a very simple answer to that question is, if you remember the Texas flooding, the president did not show up until he felt like he could provide comfort and aid to some of the grieving families, but not actually be a huge distraction for law enforcement. I mean, look, it is a reality of the world that when the president or the vice president of the United States show up, there are a lot of Secret Service, there's a lot of local law enforcement. And I remember explicitly being in the Oval Office talking with the president about this. He said, I really want to go to Texas, and I really want to visit with these grieving families, but we can't do it until the local law enforcement says we can support this without affecting the recovery and other efforts. So we would love to visit, we would love to talk to people, but some of this depends on we talk with local law enforcement, and we don't just want to show up for a photo op, we want to show up and actually help, and that's what the President of the United States is focused on. Thank you, sir. And I'll do one more question before we hit the road.
Jeff Murdoch, The Washington Times. So there are plenty of people, there are scores of people still in jail that have been pardoned under President Biden's auto pens. Do you think they should be released from prison?
Well, I think that there's something weird about this auto pen, which is that you have a guy who even some of his own staff members said did not have the mental faculty to be president of the United States, okay? While at the same time, he allegedly signed a bunch of pardons, which we now know were signed by the auto pen. I think it raises a very difficult question about whether those pardons were actually legitimate in the first place. I mean, think about this. How can you sign a pardon? How can you engage in presidential conduct that's binding if your own staff members are saying, well, this guy wasn't exactly fit to be the president of the United States? So look, I'll let the courts figure this out. As the president of the United States has said, President Trump, we always follow the court orders and we always try to work with the courts. But I think the American people, far more than, whether this pardon is thrown out or that pardon is thrown out by the court, let's step back and ask ourselves, how is it that the American media and senior members of the Democratic Party conspired to hide to hide us from the fact that the President of the United States wasn't fit to do the job. This is about more than politics. This is about more than policy disagreements. This is about if you get a phone call at 3 a.m. and there's a national security emergency, does the person who's answering the phone have the mental ability to do the job? And if the answer is no, then all of us, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, have been defrauded. And I think the Biden presidency is a big, fat example of the American media defrauding the American people. So on that note, I just want to thank you all again for having us, and just remember, we are every single day in Washington, D.C., we are fighting for you. We're fighting for your jobs, we're fighting for your wages, we're fighting for low taxes for you and your families, we're fighting for rural health care. We believe that the most important thing the President of the United States can do is put the interests of Americans first. That is what we have done for 7 months, and we'll keep on doing it for the next 3.5 years. God bless you all, and thank you for having me.
Hello, Detroit, auto worker, let me thank you for your time. You work a 40-hour week for a living. Just send it on down the line.
As he visited across there, the Vice President speaking for just about 30 minutes, all told. He covered a large range of topics, and those topics included healthcare, particularly healthcare targeted at rural America. He also talked about tax breaks and making sure that we crack down on illegal immigration. And closer to home here, he talked about some of the historic flooding, or I should say he was asked about some of the historic flooding and any relief that Wisconsinites may receive because of that flooding that we just saw here a few weeks ago. In fact, as we have been telling you, Governor Tony Evers declared a disaster declaration, sent it to the White House, to President Donald Trump, and Vice President Vance said he wasn't sure if the president had received that declaration. However, he would take it back to Washington, make sure that that request, that plea for help there was known. He said it can take at least 12 hours for that to be looked at. So many people waiting to see if we can get some federal assistance here in the Milwaukee area to help with the cleanup, be it in homes or businesses. Again, we have not heard if that, again, has been received by President Trump, but J.D. Vance giving us a word that he would take that back, and hopefully we would know more about that perhaps in the coming days and weeks. We also heard a lot about crime, and the National Guard, as you know, has been called to Washington, D.C. and to Chicago to help cut down on the crime there. Governor Pritzker there showing some resistance to that, rejecting that need for the National Guard. In fact, he told President Trump that he was not needing any help. They didn't want the National Guard there, and there was an exchange of words between the governor of Chicago and the president, very contentious, in fact, exchange of words just a few days ago. We asked here, would the National Guard perhaps be coming here, because President J.D. Vance talked about crime in Milwaukee and said that there has been a big problem here. He said that the National Guard would come perhaps, if asked, that they have to, communities, being Milwaukee, have to ask for help. And so he said he would love to help cut down on the crime, and that, again, we would have to ask for help for the National Guard to be deployed here, insinuating that, yes, there could be a presence if there would be some type of an ask from our elected officials. He also talked about the need to cut down on crime and to cut down on police being too spread out, if you will, that there needs to be a saturation on the street so people can feel safe to walk down the street. On that crime note, he did talk a little bit about Minneapolis and, of course, the tragic shooting that happened there and the need for protection for students, of course, and entire communities there to be safe from gun violence. He also talked a little bit about, of course, the main thing that he came to talk about, and that is manufacturing jobs, creating a strong workforce particularly in smaller communities like we saw there in La Crosse. He talked about the need for farmers, protecting rural health care for farmers, and just protecting rural health care in general. So he touched on a lot of different segments, but Milwaukee certainly got a lot of discussion there when it came to our help for this disastrous flooding that we saw. And so our need for FEMA to come and step in perhaps with some federal aid. So again, all questions there that were asked, and we are waiting to find out the answers to. So as he left the stage there, very upbeat that jobs will be created under this big, beautiful bill, and America's taxes and healthcare will be protected. He left on that upbeat note there after a somewhat 30-minute speech. We are going to take a quick break here, come back with a look at Minneapolis right now, because they have been having a press conference to update the latest on the shooting there in Minneapolis, perhaps getting an update on some of those who were injured. The press conference is going on right now, but we're going to take a quick break, check in on that, and we'll also have a final look at your holiday forecast. Keep it right here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We'll be right back.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Wisconsin Live Desk. I'm Mary Stoker-Smith. So happy that you're with us today. We've covered a lot of ground today. We started with the Minneapolis shootings, and then we heard from Abril Preciado in front of Marshall High School as MPS students get ready to return to class on Tuesday, September 2nd. And all things are a-go. Students are excited. Of course, teachers are excited, and all school officials are saying the classrooms will be ready. So that was some good news. We'll have more on that, of course, coming up on our later newscast on Fox 6 at 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10. We also just heard from Vice President J.D. Vance in La Crosse talking about manufacturing jobs, protecting rural health care, and the need for federal assistance for the Milwaukee area, all of southeastern Wisconsin, really to receive some federal help after all the historic flooding. Again, we don't know if that help would be coming, and if it is, when that could be coming. But he said that he would take the request back to Washington if President Trump hasn't seen that request yet from Governor Tony Evers, and make it known so that perhaps we can get some funding here to people who desperately need it. Right now, we're going to take you to Minneapolis right now, where Minnesota officials are providing an update on that terrible, deadly shooting yesterday that claimed the lives of 2 young children and wounded nearly 24 others. We don't know an update on the condition. At last check, one of the children that was injured was in critical condition, but it's a city in mourning, a city in need of community, and just compassion from all around the world, and they are certainly getting that. Let's listen into an update and see if we can find out any new information on that deadly shooting that happened yesterday. We'll take it to Minneapolis and then come back after that.
So the question was, due to previous social media posts, why was the individual able to obtain a weapon? We have nothing in the evidence that we have acquired so far that would indicate that he is a person that he did not lawfully purchase these weapons. He did not have a criminal history. The only thing that we are aware of is a traffic ticket. He did not have any state-ordered commitments for mental health. So of everything that we have seen so far, it did not rise to the level where he would have been a person prohibited from purchasing a firearm.
Can you confirm if the shooter went to the church weeks prior, and if so, how long before the shooting happened?
So Uba's question was if the shooter did go to the church weeks prior. We cannot specifically confirm that at this time, but that is obviously a part of the investigation.
Can you talk at all about the connection, his connection to the church and school?
Yep. So the question was the connection of the shooter to the church and school. We do know that the shooter did attend Mass there previously. The shooter did attend school. And the shooter's mother was an employee of the parish previously for some time. So obviously there is a connection between that shooter and this particular parish and this school there.
Even though the question tells about the 20th victim that you mentioned,
another victim you mentioned today, how is that child doing?
So there's one additional child that was injured by gunfire that we weren't aware of at the time of the last briefing. They were transported by private vehicle to a hospital outside of the city, and the report was actually made to police after they had been treated and released. So the injuries to the children range from, in this case, as you'd call like a graze wound from gunfire, all to, again, some very serious life-threatening injuries. We have some victims that have been released by the hospital at this time. We anticipate perhaps a few more today, but we still have some victims who are very seriously injured and in critical condition.
Even though there's no criminal record,
warrants?
I was going to say, even though there's no criminal record, have you been able to find any police contacts where there was odd behavior, maybe that didn't rise to the level of a crime, but in any jurisdiction that's come up?
So the question was police contacts with odd behavior. There's nothing in Minneapolis where we did not have previous police contacts with him.
Is there anything more you can say today on the name change issue? I know that yesterday you didn't confirm that, but I know it's out there. Is there anything more you can reveal just about?
So the question was about the shooter's name change. We are aware that a few years ago, I think 2019, the shooter did have their name changed. We can confirm that, yes.
I know Lou kind of asked it, and the FBI spokesperson talked about it too. Had any law enforcement you found made contact with that shooter's family previously to what happened yesterday?
I can try it. For everybody, I'm Drew Evans, Superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. It depends on specifically what you're asking. We're aware of some reports in the past. We are gathering those reports now. There will be additional information that we'll be able to share down the line. But as the Chief noted, and we think what is important in this and related to the question, this individual was not arrested for anything that would prohibit them from being able to purchase a firearm. There is not substantive police contact with this individual that would have raised concern to the level that would lead us to believe this sort of a situation would happen today. The social media, in terms of your question for that, just to be clear, the level set for everybody, there's a specific criteria in terms of how an individual can purchase a firearm legally in Minnesota. If those posts and information, I'll share it for everybody that we want to know going forward, this obviously is a terrible tragedy. We need the help of the public and everybody else. If there's concerning social media behavior by anybody, or that there's concern in their community, that they are contacting their law enforcement so that we can adequately address them in the process. That did not happen in this case.
So in terms of the evidence found with the search warrants, were you able to recover additional guns, and if so, were those registered and also legally purchased?
So the question was, in regard to the search warrant, were additional weapons recovered? The answer is no. Only the 3 weapons that were recovered at the scene. A 5.56 millimeter rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. and all three were used during this incident.
Chief, any history of gun training? Because the shooter seemed fairly accurate.
We're not aware of, at this time, any history of gun training.
In the evidence that you have recovered, has the shooter expressed any grievance against that particular church?
So the question was any specific grievance against the church. We mentioned there is a connection to the parish, a connection to the school, but we have not identified a triggering event or a specific grievance against the church that you could point to say this is the reason for why this happened.
Chief, I just want to clarify something you said. Did you say that the shooter attended Mass in the weeks before the shooting?
I did not say that. So the question was, did the shooter attend Mass in the weeks before? We know that previously the shooter had attended that parish and had attended that school when they were younger.
Is there anything, any evidence that this person was radicalized or part of some online groups or anything like that that would have inspired this behavior?
Yeah. So the question was if the individual was radicalized, I guess, for a specific cause or a part of some online groups. And the answer is no, we have not found evidence of that. Other than, again, just this fascination in general with many, many different previous mass shootings, mainly in this country, but also some from around the world.
Chief, any evidence to indicate why this particular church, just to kind of follow up on what I was asked, why this particular church was chosen as the target and not somewhere else?
So Matt's question is the question, why this particular church? And other than the obvious, which we have said, the connection to being from that church, being from that school, mom having worked there, we have not found a specific trigger for why to target the children at this church.
On that note, though, did the shooter seem aware that there was going to be this mass at this time, that the kids would be there at that time?
So,
other than the obvious that they showed up and shot.
Yeah. So the question was, did the shooter be aware? Was the shooter aware of this mass at this church? The answer would be yes. This was a daily mass, but this was special in that the children were attending to celebrate the first week of school.
We have been listening to an update there, a press conference out in Minneapolis that we have been taking you to. You have been listening to Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara identifying the shooter and talking more about the shooter in yesterday's Minneapolis church shooting that left 2 people dead, 17 others injured. And he identified, as we have been telling you, the shooter as Robin Westman, who died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound yesterday. We know that 3 weapons were recovered. Those weapons were, at this point, purchased legally. And right now they are trying to look at social media videos. One of those posted on YouTube talking about guns and about violence, and there's a manifesto that police will be scouring to see what the motive may have been. We're going to continue to leave you with that press conference in full, but we appreciate you being here this Thursday afternoon. Mary Stoker Smith, I'm going to send it back to the press conference.
For my thoughts on where we are and moving forward, I think we had dozens of police officers that responded, that entered there. I shared a story